This video will show you how to use these things, metalworking files. All right, so just to demonstrate, I'm going to clean up this anvil that we sawed out in this sawing video and just show you a couple of basic techniques. One thing that can really help while you're working with small pieces of metal is to clamp them in a ring clamp. It's not just for rings, and that'll help hold the piece while you're filing on it. So you just secure it in the ring clamp. And then one of the biggest mistakes that people make about metalworking files is forgetting that the teeth are facing away from the handle and are only cutting on the push stroke. So you don't want to be going back and forth. That's more of a sanding motion. But with the filing, you just want to hold the piece securely and push away, keeping a nice even stroke. And that can work out any kind of wiggle from the saw cutting that you did and just sort of clean up the edge. So again, I'm pushing and then lifting the file slightly, coming back to the starting point, and then filing again. And that'll refine the edge of the metal. Right now, I'm filing perpendicular to the faces of the metal, just squaring it up nicely. Depending on the piece, if it's going to be worn and you want it to be smooth and comfortable, you might want to file or kind of deburr the edges or radius the whole file or anything like that. There's a lot of shaping that can be done with the files. So it just all depends on the piece that you need to do. Now, files come in all shapes and sizes, and that's the reason that there's all different kinds of shapes that you might be cutting out of metal and areas that you need to get into and clean up. There's a regular size file. Another thing that's really helpful is what are called needle files, or much smaller files. And if you need to get into a 90-degree corner, a little great trick is to use not a square file, but actually a triangular file, and file one surface of that square, and then sort of rotate the triangle and file the other surface. And that'll give you a nice crisp 90, as opposed to using a square file, which is people's sort of impulse, but it'll still give you kind of a radius there down in the bottom of the filed area. Files also come in numbers, and depending on the numbering system, but basically the higher number, the smaller teeth on the file. So it's a finer job. You'll see less tooth marks from the filing process and things like that. So that's another important thing to keep in mind. Also, with taking care of your files, you want to make sure that they're not knocking against each other. That can break or dull the teeth of the file. And then also, if you have any pinning or little bits of metal that get caught into the file, you want to remove those because they'll damage future metal that you're going to be filing on. So you can take, in this case, a little piece of brass tubing and rub it into the grooves of the file, and that'll push these little pinnings out of the file and sort of clean it up a bit. Obviously, these are all steel, so it's okay to get a little bit of oil onto your files, but you want to make sure that they don't get rusty or get moisture on the files as well. Another different shape of file that can be really useful is called a riffler. And these have, again, the same sort of teeth that cut on the push stroke, but are in different shapes to get into unusual spaces. So let's say you have an enclosed area that you need to get in there and clean up a little solder flood or something like that. Rifflers are great for that, getting in there and filing out as you need to. But that's certainly not equipment that you need to invest in for a beginner. Just a good set of regular files, and then maybe needle files are a great thing to start with. So there's other types of files that I'd like to sort of talk about and show you. One is called a checkering file. And a checkering file is used for putting a ridged or coined edge on metal. So it has very sharp teeth in a straight line, and so it can cut grooves like those grooves on the side of a coin. It can also be great for texturing the metal, where it can do a very aggressive sort of scratched surface on the metal. So I'll show you here. Take the metal and sort of go in little circles, and it just gives it a very consistent bright sort of scratch finish on the metal. But it can also, just to show you, can put those grooves on the edges, which is sometimes good for grip or texture or just a particular look. But again, that's kind of a more advanced file that you don't need to invest in the beginning, unless it's just that scratch texture is something you plan to use a lot of. Something that sometimes you'll see are these combination files that have a variety of different sort of teeth and shapes. Now in this case, this is combined for both waxworking and metalworking. So the single cuts here are really much better on wax and plastic, and would be dulled much more quickly if you tried to use it on metal and kind of jump around and not be smooth. This other end has the sort of the double cut to it that works much better for metals. Important thing to realize is that rasps for woodworking, or again if you're working on plastics or something like that, have really pronounced teeth and are not good for metal at all. So really keep these in the woodworking pile, not the metalworking pile. One other kind of type that we're going to look at is diamond files. Now these are called files, but technically you really use them like sanding sticks, because they have crushed industrial diamonds on the surface. They have the shapes of a file, and they're really great for maintaining little curvatures and things like that. But you can go back and forth. So for instance, if I was going to file this piece, you could, since it's coated with that, go back and forth on it. These can work on metal, but they can also work with a lubricant on even ceramics and glass and things like that, because it's not metal teeth that are doing the cutting, but that crushed industrial diamond. One other set that I really like as far as the diamond files go is this kind of all-in-one portable set. So it has a little pin vise in the end there to hold the file, which can be much more comfortable for the smaller needle files. And it has all different shapes held in the tool itself. So you just take one out that you're going to use. And you could use that by hand, but it's pretty small, and if you're doing it for a fair amount of time, can get uncomfortable. So you can set it in that pin vise in the end, and that's much more comfortable to hold, and you're ready to go again. So as you can see, there's a variety of different types of files and things like that. So it sort of depends on the kind of work that you're going to be doing and what you necessarily need to with the materials and the job that you're doing. So hopefully this was informative for you. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you can hear from me when I post future videos. Thanks for stopping by.